There are secrets that are not secrets because the person keeping them wants to hide. There are secrets that are kept because the person keeping them has been told, explicitly, implicitly, by the culture they live in and the rooms they have been in and the specific accumulated signal that rooms gave over a long time, that the telling would cost something that the telling was not worth. Not because the secret was shameful, though shame was often part of the mechanism, but because the telling changed the room. Because the room organized itself differently around a person once it knew, in the specific, protective, well-intentioned, but also sometimes suffocating way that rooms organized themselves around people they understood to be carrying something particular. And because some people, in some stages of their lives, needed the room to be organized around who they were rather than around what they were carrying, and had made the practical decision, the quiet daily, I know what I am doing decision, to keep the carrying private so that the room could keep seeing them. This is a story about a woman named Rosalind who had been making that decision for 4 years, and who had been good at making it, and who walked onto a Family Feud stage, and who was, for the first 2 rounds, exactly as good at making it as she had always been. And about what happened in the 3rd round when Steve Harvey asked her a question in the pregame that he had been following a thread to reach, and that she answered, in the specific 4 years of keeping it private way, with the managed version of the truth, and about what Steve Harvey said when he heard the managed version, which was the quiet following, tell me more question that the managed version produced in a person who was paying the kind of attention he was paying. And about what Rosalind said when he asked the question, which was the true thing, said in the plain voice, in the room that was large and lit and running, and that received it with the full, gathered, warm attention of a room that had been given something true and that knew how to hold it. And about what Steve Harvey said when the true thing arrived, which was not a speech, not a production, not the performed for the camera's version of receiving something. It was a pause that was longer than any pause he had made in 14 years of hosting this show. And then it was 5 words, and the 5 words were exactly right. And the room received them, and Rosalind received them, and the afternoon became what the afternoon became. Hit that like button and subscribe right now before we go any further, because this channel is here for exactly these stories, for the truths told in the right room, and we come back with one every single week. Now let us talk about Rosalind. Rosalind Keyes was 44 years old and was a high school chemistry teacher in Memphis, Tennessee, who had been teaching for 18 years and who was, by every measure available, exceptional at it. She was the teacher who made chemistry legible, who understood that what stood between most students and chemistry was not the chemistry but the experience of being lost in the early stages, which produced the specific, closed, I am not a chemistry person identity that students assigned themselves, and that then became the impediment, and who had found, over 18 years, the specific ways to prevent that closure from happening, which was by meeting each student in the place where they could first understand one thing, and then building from that one thing outward. She was warm in the direct, clinical, this is what is true way of someone who found warmth compatible with accuracy and who had never found them in conflict. She was precise. She had the quality of someone whose relationship with the accurate thing was one of long, mutual respect, the kind of respect that made you choose the accurate thing even when the accurate thing was more uncomfortable than the comfortable version of the thing. She had been a chemistry teacher for 18 years. She had been living with a cancer diagnosis for 4 years. Not, and this was the part that was specific and particular, and that she needed the room to understand before it organized itself around the carrying. Not in the dramatic, everything is uncertain, fighting for her life way that cancer diagnoses sometimes were. Her cancer was a specific kind, a slow-moving, chronic, managed variety, and she had been managing it for 4 years with the organized, forward-moving, this is part of my life now quality she brought to everything that became part of her life. She had an excellent oncologist. She had a treatment protocol that was working in the specific, measured, here is what the labs say way that working looked like in her situation. She was not in immediate danger. She was in the specific, longer term, you're going to be managing this for a long time and managing it well-conditioned that some cancers produced, which was its own kind of life and its own kind of carrying. She had been carrying it for 4 years. She had told her family, who knew. She had told her closest friends, who knew. She had not told her school, because telling the school would have changed the room, and she needed the chemistry room to stay organized around who she was as a teacher, and not around what she was managing. She had made this decision with the organized, practical, I understand the implications quality of a chemistry teacher who understood that systems responded to inputs, and who had thought carefully about which inputs she was providing to which systems. She had not told the Family Feud production team. The special circumstances section of the application had been left blank by her sister, who had submitted it and who had known and who had also understood Rosalind's decision about which inputs to provide to which systems. She had come to the show as herself. As a chemistry teacher who had been teaching for 18 years and who had a reputation and a family and a life and a reason to be on television, which was that her family had submitted an application and she had agreed, and she was going to be excellent at it because she was excellent at most things she attempted. She had been excellent at it for the first 2 rounds. Her sister Danielle, 41, was a pediatric nurse in Memphis who had known about the diagnosis for 4 years, and who had the specific nurse's quality of someone who had been in the medical world long enough to have a realistic and non-dramatic relationship with illness, and who brought this to her role as Rosalind's sister. Not the scared, what does this mean quality, but the present, what do you need right now quality. Their mother, Eugenia, 70, was a retired Memphis City Schools principal who had the warm, organized, I have been in rooms full of young people for 35 years quality of someone who had seen a great many things, and who received each new thing with the specific, unhurried. This is the available information quality of someone who did not escalate until escalation was required. Rosalind's husband, James, 46, was an accountant who had known about the diagnosis for 4 years, and who had been beside Rosalind through the managing of it with the specific, organized. I understand that this is part of our life quality of a man who had married a chemistry teacher, and who brought to the managing the same organized, forward-moving. Here is what we do next quality he brought to quarterly taxes. And Rosalind's closest colleague and friend of 12 years, Deborah, 45, who was a biology teacher at the same school and who was the one colleague Rosalind had told, and who had been providing, for 4 years, the specific colleague friend who knows quality of someone who kept the knowing private and who was present in the daily hallway. This is just Tuesday way that daily support was most useful. The pregame. Steve Harvey arrived at Rosalind with the genuine, curious, I want to understand this person attention he brought to people who had something to tell him. He asked about the chemistry teaching. She described it with the warm, organized, direct precision of someone who found the work exactly right for who she was. I teach students to see what is actually happening in the physical world, at a level they cannot see with their eyes, and to understand why it happens. He said, that sounds like you are teaching them to trust the evidence. She said, I am teaching them that evidence is the most reliable thing available. He said, do they find that reassuring or frightening? She said, usually frightening first. He said, and then, she said, and then reassuring. He said, because the evidence is reliable even when it is hard. She said, especially when it is hard. She said it in the specific, I have been living this way of someone who had spent 4 years finding this to be true in a context she was not describing yet. Steve Harvey received it. He heard the weight in it. He filed it. He said, is there something you want to tell me about the especially? He said it gently in the following voice in the way he asked things when he heard more in a sentence than the sentence had been offering. Rosalind looked at him. She received the question. She was in the specific, I am going to give you the managed version moment of a person who had been giving the managed version for 4 years and who was good at it. She said, I have had some health challenges. She said it in the warm, direct, this is sufficient disclosure voice. She said, I have been managing them well. She said, I am doing fine. She said it with the specific, I have answered the question quality of someone who had answered the question and was ready to move on. Steve Harvey did not move on. He said, tell me about the health challenges. He said it in the quiet, direct, I am asking because I am asking voice, not the professional warmth and move on voice. The other voice, the following the thread voice. He said, you said, especially when it is hard, and you said it in a way that told me the hard thing is something specific. He said, you don't have to tell me, but I am asking. Rosalind looked at him. She was in the specific. The room is asking quality, the quality of a person who had made a decision about which inputs to provide to which systems and who was now in a system that was asking directly and who was re-evaluating the decision in real time. She looked at James. He looked at her. He had the warm, this is your choice expression of a man who had been beside this person for 4 years and who understood that the decision was hers. She looked at Danielle, who had the same expression. She looked at Steve Harvey. She said, I have been living with cancer for 4 years. She said it in the plain, direct, accurate voice that was her truest voice, the chemistry teacher's voice, the evidence is the most reliable thing voice. She said, a specific kind that is manageable, that I am managing well. She said, I am not in immediate danger. I have an excellent oncologist. The treatment is working. Said, I have not told my school because I needed the chemistry room to be organized around who I am as a teacher, not around what I am managing. She said, I have told my family. I have told James. I have told Deborah. She said, I have not told a room this large before. She said it with the warm, slightly wondering, I did not expect to do this today quality of someone who had arrived somewhere unexpected. She said, I trust evidence. She said, this room seems like safe evidence. She said it in the specific, clinical, this is my assessment voice of a chemistry teacher who had just completed an evaluation. She said, so I told it. The room received this in the specific, gathered, full-weight, warm stillness of a room that had just been trusted with something, and that understood it had been trusted, and that was receiving the trust with the specific, careful, this matters quality of a room that knew what mattered. Steve Harvey did not speak for a moment that was longer than any pause he had made in 14 years of hosting. He was in the receiving of it, in the specific, full, not managing quality of a man for whom the professional and the personal had arrived at the same point simultaneously, which was the point of a woman who had been carrying something for 4 years and who had just trusted a room with it, and who had given her reason, which was, I trust evidence. This room seems like safe evidence. He received all of it. He was in it. Then he said 5 words. He said, thank you for trusting us. He said it in the quiet, direct, entirely plain voice that was not the professional voice and was not the produced voice and was not the crafted for the camera's version of the response. It was the response. 5 words, direct, no embellishment, no performed emotion, no speech. Just, thank you for trusting us. Said in the voice of a man who meant it completely and who understood that embellishing it would have diminished it and who did not embellish it. Rosalind received the 5 words with the full, complete, quiet expression of a woman who had been given the exactly right response and who was receiving it. She said, thank you for asking. She said it in the same plain voice. 6 words, same register. Same register because she was a chemistry teacher and she understood equivalence and the exchange had been equivalent, his trust in asking, her trust in answering, his thanks for the trust, her thanks for the asking. She said, I did not know I was going to say it until you asked. She said, I think I needed the question. She said, and the room. She said, the room is the right size. She said it with the warm, settled, I have assessed this expression. She said, okay. She said it in the forward moving, what comes next voice. Let's play. Steve Harvey looked at the room. He said, before we do that, I want to say one thing. He said it in the quiet, organizing this matter's voice. He said, this woman has been carrying something for 4 years. She carried it into this room. She carried it through the first 2 rounds. He said, she made a decision about who gets to know. She made it carefully the way she makes everything. She taught herself that evidence is the most reliable thing, and then she applied that to her own life, and she managed what she needed to manage, and she kept the rooms she needed to keep. He said, and then I asked a question, and she answered it honestly because she trusts evidence, and the room seemed like safe evidence. He said, I want to make sure the room deserves that assessment. He looked at the 300 people. He said, the room is going to hold this correctly. The room is not going to make this about the illness. The room already knows what she is, a chemistry teacher who has been teaching for 18 years and who makes students who think they cannot do chemistry find out that they can. He said, that is who is standing at this podium. He said, the room knows that. The room is going to keep knowing that. He said, whatever she has been managing for 4 years is part of her life and it is hers and the room is honored to have it, and the room is going to keep the main thing, which is who she is. He said, that is what she needed the room to be organized around. He said, that is what we will be organized around. He looked at Rosalind. He said, the room deserves your trust. We are going to prove it. He said, let's play Family Feud. Rosalind said, yes. She said it in the warm, settled, I believe you voice. Let's play. The game resumed, and what it revealed was the chemistry teacher's complete, direct, evidence-trusting intelligence applied to survey questions with the warm, methodical. This is what the evidence says accuracy of someone who had spent 18 years understanding what was actually happening at a level you could not see with your eyes, and who applied this to the survey with the same organized. What does the evidence indicate quality? She was excellent in the specific, clinical, right at a high rate way of someone whose relationship with evidence was the most reliable thing available, who did not guess when she knew, who trusted the knowing, and who had 18 years of building the kind of knowing that did not require guessing, because the evidence had been compiled over 18 years, and the evidence was reliable. The opposing family, for their part, played with the warm, forward-moving, I am going to be in this room correctly quality of a family that had been in the room when the true thing was said, and that was playing with the specific, decent, we are honored to be here quality of people who understood what the room had been given, and who were not going to diminish it by playing carelessly. They were excellent. They were also outmatched by the chemistry teacher in the same way that most rooms were outmatched when the chemistry teacher had all of her attention available, which she did, because she had said the thing, and the thing was in the room's keeping, and her hands were therefore free. James was organized and accurate with the accountant's systematic, evidence-based quality. The specific, numbers tell a story intelligence of someone who had been reading what the numbers said for years, and who brought this to survey answers with the direct. This is what the data indicates quality. Danielle was warm and precise with the nurse's ground level. What is actually here intelligence? The quality that 4 years of being beside her sister through the managing had built in her, which was the quality of someone who knew what was required and who provided it without being asked. Eugenia was warm and right with the 35 years of running schools' comprehensive knowledge of what people in schools said and did and wanted and feared, which was the most comprehensive model of the general population in the building, and which she applied to survey questions with the specific, organized. I have seen everything quality of a principal who had, in fact, seen everything. And Deborah had the biology teacher's parallel to chemistry understanding of what the survey was asking and what the evidence indicated. The same evidence trusting. What does the data suggest quality that she and Rosalind had been teaching alongside each other for 12 years, and that they had, in 12 years of hallway conversations and shared approaches, and the specific colleague intelligence of two people who had been teaching adjacent subjects for a long time, made into a shared practice. She was right at the rate of someone who had been developing this practice alongside the most evidence-accurate person she knew for 12 years, which was high. The Keys family won the main game. They won it with the organized, evidence is the most reliable thing quality of a team whose most important member had been trusting evidence for 18 years professionally and for 4 years personally, and who brought both to the game with the same competent, forward-moving, the work is the work quality. Fast money. Rosalind walked to the podium. She walked to it with the specific, upright, forward-facing chemistry teacher's walk, the walk of someone who had been standing at the front of rooms full of students who thought they could not do chemistry and who had been proving them wrong for 18 years and who was not going to stop proving them wrong now. Steve Harvey looked at her from across the stage. He said, 18 years, evidence is the most reliable thing. He said it in the plain, organizing voice. He said, you trusted the room with something today. The room is going to be organized around who you are. You are the chemistry teacher who makes it legible. He said, let's see what 18 years of teaching evidence looks like in 20 seconds. Rosalind said, start the clock. He hit the button. Rosalind Keys answered 5 Family Feud survey questions in 20 seconds with the warm, methodical, entirely accurate intelligence of a chemistry teacher who had spent 18 years understanding what was actually happening at a level you could not see with your eyes, and who applied this to the survey with the same organized. Evidence is reliable quality she applied to everything. She was not fast in the show-off sense. She was precise in the chemistry sense, the specific right answer identified and delivered quality of someone who trusted what the evidence indicated and who did not second-guess the evidence because the evidence was the most reliable thing. 4 of her 5 answers were number 1. Her 5th answer, delivered at 17 seconds in Rosalind's voice, the warm, direct, the evidence indicates voice, was number 1. James scored 86 points in the second seat with the accountant's organized, systematic accuracy. Combined total, 281 points, $20,000. Steve Harvey brought the check. He carried it to Rosalind and he held it and he said, you trusted the room today? You said, I trust evidence. This room seems like safe evidence. He said, the room wants to confirm that it was safe. He held the check between them. $20,000 for 18 years of teaching evidence. And for trusting this room with what you have been managing for 4 years. He said, the room is organized around who you are. He said it in the plain, final, this is what I said and it is still true voice. The chemistry teacher who makes it legible, that is who is standing at this podium. That is who the room knows. He gave her the check. He said, the check is for the evidence. You were right about the evidence. He said, you are always right about the evidence. Rosalind took the check. She held it. She looked at James, who had the warm, organized, we are doing this together quality. She looked at Danielle, who had the warm, nurses, I have been beside you for 4 years quality. She looked at Eugenia, who had the specific principles, I have seen many things and this is my daughter quality. She looked at Deborah, who had the colleague friend who knows, 12 years of knowing quality. She looked at Steve Harvey. She said, I want to say something. She said it in the organized, I have thought about this and I am going to say it voice. She said, I have been keeping this out of rooms for 4 years because I needed the rooms to be organized around who I am, not around what I am managing, she said. That was the right decision for the rooms I was in, she said. This room is different, she said. This room asked the question correctly, and it received the answer correctly. And it has been organized around who I am through the whole afternoon, even after I said what I said, she said. I want other people who are making the decision about which rooms to tell to know that the right room is possible. She said it in the direct, evidence-based, this is what I have found voice. I did not know this room was the right room until it asked the question, but it was the right room, she said. You will find your right room. She said it in the warm, direct, I am speaking to someone who is in the same carrying way of someone who knew who she was speaking to because she had been that person for 4 years. It will ask you the right question, and it will receive the answer correctly, and it will be organized around who you are, she said. Keep looking for the right room. She said, this one was mine. Steve Harvey received this. He said in the quiet, final, this is the last word voice. She said, keep looking for the right room. This one was mine. He said it to the room, to the cameras, to everyone watching. He said, she trusted us. We held it correctly. That is what a room is for. The episode aired 7 weeks later after Rosalind had reviewed the cut and had made the decision, the same organized, which inputs to which systems decision, that the clip was one she was willing to be in publicly. She had decided yes because the room had proved itself safe, and because the proof was on tape, and because the tape was itself evidence and she trusted evidence. She had also decided yes because of the specific thing she had said at the end, which was the thing she had wanted to say to the people who were making the same decision she had been making, and who needed to hear it from someone who had been making it for 4 years, and who had found the right room, and who knew what the right room felt like from the inside. She had wanted to say it in a room large enough that the saying reached them. She had found that room on a Wednesday afternoon in Memphis by trusting a direct question from a host who had been paying the kind of attention she had needed someone to pay. The clip spread in the quiet, wide, personal way that things spread when they named something that many people had been inside. The something was the decision, the specific, practical, I know what I am doing decision to keep the carrying out of certain rooms, so the rooms could stay organized around who you were rather than around what you were carrying. Several people who had made the same decision about their own carrying, their own illness or loss or struggle or grief or anything else that produced the specific, accumulated which rooms get to know decision, shared it with the specific. This named it quality of people watching their private decision be described accurately in public. Several said, I have been making this decision for years. I have never heard it described this way. I understand my own decision better now. Several said, I have been keeping it out of rooms where I needed to be seen as who I am. That is not dishonesty. That is knowing which rooms are ready. Several said, I am looking for my right room. What was also noted and widely was how Rosalind had described the decision. She had not described it as a coping mechanism or as a defense or as the product of shame. She had described it as a practical decision about which inputs to provide to which systems. The chemistry teacher's description, the evidence-trusting description, the description of a person who had thought carefully about what the system would do when it received the information, and who had made an informed choice about when and how to provide it. Several people in the chronic illness community shared it with the specific. This is the language I have been looking for quality of people who had been making exactly this decision, and who had been receiving from well-meaning people the suggestion that not telling was a form of isolation or shame, when in fact it was often something more practical and more considered than either of those things. One wrote, she described exactly what I have been doing, and she described it accurately. It is not shame. It is knowing which rooms are organized to receive it correctly and waiting for those rooms. Several said the distinction was the most useful thing they had taken from the clip. Several said they were going to use the language, which inputs to which systems, which rooms are ready, in the conversations they needed to have with people who had been asking them why they hadn't told. Steve Harvey's 5 words traveled separately from the rest of the clip. Thank you for trusting us, said without embellishment. Said in the plain, direct, this is what I mean voice. Several people wrote about the 5 words specifically, about the specific particular form of the response, about what it would have meant if he had said something larger or more produced or more performed. One wrote, he could have said so many things. He said the right thing, which was the smallest right thing. He thanked her for the trust. He did not explain the trust or celebrate the trust or perform his reception of the trust. He thanked her for it. That is what you do when someone trusts you. You thank them. Several people said they had sent the clip to someone they had been keeping the carrying from with the note, I am looking for the right room. This might be it. Several said the person had watched it and had called them. Several said the conversation happened. There was also, in the weeks after the broadcast, a quieter thing that moved through the comments and the shares in the specific interior private message way that the most personal things moved. People writing to their oncologists and their doctors about the specific, manageable, being managed quality of Rosalind's description, and asking whether the framing was available to them, whether their carrying could be described in those terms, whether the forward moving while managing quality was something they could have and keep. Several oncologists apparently shared the clip with patients. One oncologist wrote a brief piece for a medical blog about the specific psychological weight of how patients described their condition to themselves and to others, and about how the vocabulary mattered, and about how Rosalind's vocabulary, evidence-based, practical, managing well, not in immediate danger, was itself a kind of treatment, the specific, organized. This is part of my life, and I have a protocol quality of someone who had integrated the information and who had a plan and who was executing the plan. He said, I shared this with 3 patients this week. He said, 2 of them said they had been looking for the right vocabulary and had not found it. He said, the vocabulary matters. Rosalind went back to Memphis. She went back to the chemistry classroom and the 18 years and the students who thought they could not do chemistry and who she was going to prove wrong again. This year, the way she had been proving them wrong every year with the warm, organized, meet them where they are quality that she had developed over 18 years, and that had never once been diminished by the managing. The managing was part of her life. The chemistry was the main thing. The main thing was the main thing. The room had said so. She went back to the room that was organized around who she was, which was the chemistry teacher, which was what she had always needed the rooms to be organized around, and which this room had been after the true thing was said in it, and which every room she walked into from here was going to have access to because the tape was evidence and the evidence was reliable and the room had held it correctly and she had said, keep looking for the right room. This one was mine. And it was, and the evidence confirmed it. She trusted the evidence. She always had. If this story reached you, if you have been keeping the carrying out of rooms because you need those rooms to be organized around who you are, or if you are looking for the right room, share this today. Leave a comment below and tell us what you're carrying from this story, because this community carries things together and your voice here matters. And subscribe right now if you are not already with us, because every single week we come back with stories exactly like this one. Stories about the rooms that hold the true thing correctly. Stories about the 5 words that were exactly right. And stories about the woman who trusted evidence and found the right room and said, keep looking for the right room. This one was mine. We will see you in the next one.